Welcome. I'm Lauren. I am product marketing manager at Bridge. For those of you who are on Bridge, you probably see a lot of emails from me. I am joined here by Craig, who is Director of Programming and Coaching Education at Results Fitness. This is part one of a three-part webinar series that Craig's going to be doing with us. So we'll be doing one each month. So keep an eye out for the one that will be end of April. You probably already saw it on the page you signed up for this webinar, but we'll be sending out some specific outreach just to make sure you guys don't miss it. And then a little bit of housekeeping as we get started here. Craig's going to run us through his talk, but as questions come up, feel free to send them in the question section, and we'll save them all and go through them at the end. If you're having any issues or audio problems, you can also send in a chat. I'll keep an eye on that and help everyone make sure they're having a good experience here. And so with that, Craig, I will pass it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us again. This is our second three-part webinar series. We did one last year. If you hadn't had a chance to check those out, please do, because these all kind of build upon those as well. So those are in there's a YouTube playlist. I know that Lauren has sent me, and I've shared that before in some of the social media stuff. So hopefully you have seen those. But we're going to kind of build on one that we talked about with best practices. Actually, there are a couple things that I wanted to share as best practices to kind of tie on with that previous webinar that we did. There's some important things that sometimes are things that make your life easier, and sometimes people jump on and say, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. So I always want to make that stuff very visible and share that with everyone, because I think it's really, really important. And then after we get done going through those tips, we're going to talk about some of those new and exciting parameter updates in real time. So the way this is going to work today is I'm going to kind of bounce in and out of PowerPoint and Google Chrome, showing you some live demos on the Bridge platform, just because I think that's super important to see the visual representation of how you do that. If you do have a question about something that's relevant to something I'm showing, as Lauren said, just kind of jump in and ask about that if you need to. Ideally, save those questions towards the end, but if it's really, really pertinent and something you need to see while I'm in the act of doing that, that'll probably be a little bit more efficient way of explaining it if possible. All right, so again, thanks for joining us. If you haven't gone on to my Instagram link tree, there's a little gift for you, a coaching habits checklist for you to utilize that people have tended to like a lot. So go ahead and download that. There's also a link to the webinar signups for this as well down there. And there's also some Bridge articles that I've written on the blog for you to check out. And that load prescriptions one's probably a good one to do some reading on, because that's going to be tying into our third webinar series here. I'm going to kind of build upon that and that. Okay, so let's go into some of these hot tips for programming. The first one is how to copy a week of a program to a different program. So why would you want to use that? You can use that as a form of templating, actually. So when you build out a program for a athlete or a client and you want to use the guts of it for someone else, you can simply move that over to a different program, or you can move it to within the same program to a different phase. It's also a good way to review a previous program when you're building out, or review a previous phase when you're building out a new phase. So let's show you what that looks like, and hopefully this works real seamlessly. Right on, it did. Perfect. Okay, so first let's use it to build out a new program. So we're on our home screen here, and what I'm going to do is write a new program. So here's how I will typically do this a lot of times. Let's go to the home screen. I click on the new program button, and I'm just going to use demo program, if I can spell, or webinar as the name of it. I'm going to save it. And then what's going to happen is it's going to ask me how I want to build this from the phase level. So I can do this from an existing program, which is often how we'll do it, and just drop a full phase in. I can just click on new phase as well. So it's just another way to go about doing this. I'm just going to call it phase 1. Save it. Now, let's say I'm building this program for someone that is very similar demographics, profile, same goals as someone else that I've written a program previously for. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually bump out of this and go into my program library. And then I'm just going to go into the avatar that I use a lot for demonstrations, which I call Bridge Tester, which is the name of a client on my roster. I'm going to go ahead and open that program up. So what I'm going to do is just go over here to phase 1, and I'm going to build this into a new program. So what I'm going to do is just click on the first week. There's these little 3 dots over here, and this is from the builder view for this program. And I'm going to copy it to my new program. So I just go here. And then the nice thing about this on the Bridge is that the most recently edited program is right at the top. I can search for it by name if need be. And then I just click on phase 1. And then I press next. And then it asks me to order it. So I'm just going to move it right above that kind of blank page and press next. Then I save it. I'm going to go back to my library. The most recently edited one comes up here too, so it makes it easy to find. I hit that. I'm going to delete this one. This is the blank phase, week phase in the week in the phase, sorry. And then I'm going to go over here and then I open this up. And then I have got that week, just the 1 week transferred over. You can obviously do that. You can send the phase over and all that good stuff. So that's a real elegant way to do that. If I wanted to move this week to a different phase, I can simply do that as well. Let's say this was all built out and I was finishing out this phase in the program and I want to send this week to a different phase. I can do that by clicking on week actions, copy to phase, and I can send this over to phase 2 if I had a phase 2 on this program. So that is the way you can do that. And it's a super, super elegant way to do that without having to open up different tabs and things like that. So I hope that is a real helpful feature. It's a real great way to go about kind of making things a little more efficient as you are writing programs. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. And the next thing we're going to talk about, a question that comes up a lot from people, is how to copy a workout or a training session to a new phase or the same phase. And this is a relatively new feature, and this is something that's awesome because it is really, really used a lot within our programming. So we're going to go over back to Google Chrome. I'm going to pull up a demo program here for you and show you how to do this. This is really nice. So I'm going to go into my team. I'm going to hit my Bridge Tester avatar. Now, what I'm going to do, so when I go into the client roster page or the athlete roster page, this shows me completed workouts and what the calendar looks like as they're going, the athlete or client is going through their program. When they complete a program or a work training session, it gives me a little check mark. I'm going to go over here into edit program, which is going to take me into the builder view. This is the easiest way to do this. Now, what I'm going to do is just simply click on a session. I'm going to click on B in this case. I'm going to copy it. And then what happens is all these little dots or these open blank spaces pop up. So I can copy this workout into any of these spaces within this phase. So if I want to clone that, I can do that and drag and put it wherever I want within the phase for the client. If I want to go into phase 2, and this is another way to kind of look at your previous phase work, let's say we've got 6 weeks in this program. I'm going to cancel that for a second. I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to go into week 6, and let's say the client or athlete finished this program. I'm going to copy this, and I want to drop it into phase 2, just because I want to look and see what they did, what exercises they used, and all that good stuff. I can just drop it right there. So then I can open it up in week 1 and take a look at what the different exercises were in week 1 and what they did and all that good stuff on it, and where I can change that and all that. So that's a real elegant way to do that as well. And that feature is awesome to be able to utilize that. Now, Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is a way to move a workout itself into a different program yet. So the way we do that right now, and jump in, Lauren, if I am missing that, the way we do that a lot of times is we just temporarily, if I want to move this to a different program, we'll just kind of save it as a template and write temporary. So I'll just go here and I'll put temp. Then I will save that, and then I can find it and drag it into a different program if I want to use it that way. And then I have to go back and delete it later. So that's how you would do that. That question comes up a lot as well.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it for now.
Perfect. Awesome. But that feature is an upgrade that is a fantastic thing to use, especially the ability to drop that workout into different phases. We use that a ton to be able to look at previous work, which is, again, increasing that whole concept of visibility and making things more visible is always the way to go to make things a little bit easier for you. Here's just a tip that I want to make sure everyone's aware of. We talk about templates a lot within the system and how to utilize those different things. But let's say you're brand new to the Bridge and you taking all your Excel spreadsheets, which I did when we first started using it, and built them over into the Bridge. The thing you have to understand is once you have built at least one program, you want to never, ever have to start from a blank screen again. So what do I mean by that? It kind of ties into what I showed you about dragging a week in from a different program. When I go to the home screen and I write a new program, whoops, I'm going to write in demo 2. Once you have that first program built out, you should never, ever have to just start from scratch here from a blank screen ever again. You should always pull from a template, a previous program, unassigned program that you've written, a program you've written for someone else, whether it's dragging in the week, dragging in the whole phase, whatever it may be. That's just going to make your life a whole lot easier. Then you make changes from there. You don't have to start from scratch and kind of tailor a brand new suit every single time that you write a program. And you have to leverage your time by doing it. And the whole purpose of using a digital platform is to make your life easier and more efficient and be able to spend more time coaching. So make sure you follow that tip, okay? And the next thing, this is a question that comes up often, is how do I, after someone's completed a program, how do I quickly review what they did? If I'm gonna get on a Zoom call with a remote client, how do I review their last several completed training sessions? So let's show you how to do that. I'm gonna go back to the home screen. I'm gonna go back to my demo avatar here, the bridge tester. We're gonna go into the client page, number one. So when I go into the client page, again, we're gonna see the calendar. Like this is just demo, so I just quickly completed a workout here. So this is in playlist view, not on calendar mode. I just did this again for the purposes of the webinar. But you're gonna see these check marks when the training session or workout has been completed. All I need to do is scroll over that, and then I can quickly scan all the different things that were completed within the training sessions. I can look at the loads used, the reps, and all that good stuff from this view. So if we're going to have a discussion about this, I can look at those things. The other key feature here is, let's say I'm going through this with one of my remote clients and they tell me, oh, I put the wrong loads in there. Okay, well, let's take a peek at this and we can update these loads. So if I just scroll over the load, it's going to give me that little edit button and I can click on that. Oh, I actually use 45 pounds here. So I can click that. I can scroll over this. Okay, I use 45 here. And then check off, make sure it saves. So now that data saves there and I can make those edits to it. So that question always comes up. The client doesn't necessarily have to go in there, restart the workout and make edits themselves. You can do it from the calendar view here on the client page, which is not to be confused with that builder view. So when I want to go into the builder view on the calendar, I go to edit program. And that takes me back here. And that's where you actually copy, from a programmer standpoint, copy those workouts and move them other places as needed. That's where that screen was. So that's the builder view, and that's the actual calendar view on the other side. Remember, in playlist, the week is just how it's structured out, not necessarily how the training is going to be completed in the playlist mode. Hopefully that is extremely helpful for you. Okay, the next thing that I want to discuss is what's new and what's up with the new parameters. And as you know, I love the non-trivial details and getting down into the micro level for programming and set rep protocols and all that good stuff. It's one of my favorite topics. So I want to discuss some of those different things and give you some views of what it looks like and some of those things that are really effective from a athlete standpoint to enhance their experience with some of these upgrades. And before I go into doing that as well, a lot of questions always pop up about how to use this stuff. There's some wonderful stuff that I'm sure has been painstakingly developed by Lauren and the team in the help and resources section on the Bridge. If you go in there, you will find answers to most of your questions in great detail with a lot of visual pictures in there to be able to look at those things. So please use those resources. A lot of times when you have a question, most of the time the answer's there and it's pretty easy to find. One of the purposes of doing a live little demo like this is just to show you how to utilize it in real time. So I think that's another helpful way to go through these things. So probably what I would say is the most requested feature on the parameters is rep ranges. So this is, I think, has been a challenge with a lot of digital programming platforms, is the fact that it was hard to write rep ranges. And we love using rep ranges a lot of times because progressive overload's pretty much automatically built into that. So I'm going to bounce out of this and come back to it and go over and open a phase here and open up the parameters for us. Oh, kicked me out for a sec.
Do you share this login with someone else? They might be logging.
Yes, somebody at the gym is probably using my login. I might have to go into my own in a second.
On it right now. But that is something we do get asked about. So that was kind of a helpful frequently asked question. If you share a login, only one can be logged in on the web at a time. So if someone else logs in, this is what happens.
Yeah, I meant to send a note over there saying, hey, don't log in. I'm using the Bridge for a webinar today. So you're welcome for the free demo on that. Oh, if I get logged out again, I'll just log in under my coach credentials. Okay, so let's go into the rep range idea here. So I'm going to just open up a exercise here. And what we were doing previously is often writing a note like 6 to 8 reps in the note section. The new feature that was asked about a lot is just this rep range feature. So remember, when I open up parameters, I can have up to 3 parameters selected. When I choose reps, I can open up that reps drop down, and then it will give me a range. Okay, I could leave it blank if I wanted to, and there's lots of different ways of programming this. It's very interesting when we talk about rep ranges, and we'll talk about this when we get into the load prescription idea. If I write 6 to 8 reps as a range, I'm going to have some clients that are going to do 6 no matter what. I'm going to have other clients that are going to do the upper limit and get 8 reps, try for 8 reps at all costs. So there was different strategies. Sometimes we would leave it blank for clients to write in the reps that they would write in previously. So it would look like, we would just leave a 0 here on all of these. Excuse me. With the rep range, now I don't even need this note. We'll oftentimes write that parameter or the description in of what I want the progression plan to be. So I would say, tell someone to, hey, when you get to the upper end of the rep range, then I want you to increase the difficulty, either adding load or lowering the elevation and so forth. But instead of writing 6 to 8 reps in the note, I can just write 6 to 8 reps right here, apply it to all to make it a little bit easier on me. And now a rep range is prescribed for the client. So I'm going to move back to the PowerPoint here. Hopefully this isn't too annoying, bouncing back and forth here. But I'm going to show you what happens. So if this is a different exercise, this is a little video that I made on here. But there's an example of the note that I left here. Say the client puts in 400 pounds for their RDL. It's a pretty good RDL. And then when I try to click it off, because they did not write in a rep range, it's going to give them a warning and say you need to enter a rep value for that. So that really, the beauty of that is it solves that problem of clients not writing in the rep count that they utilize on each individual set. So we really, really like that because it won't let you tick the exercise off until it gets entered, as long as you have written a value in there. If you just leave it as zeros, it still gives you the option to tick it off. So that's why it's important to use that if you want to make sure that you get that warning, is to put a numeric value in there rather than leaving it as a 0. The other awesome feature that I really, really like, and we're going to dive into this a lot more when we talk about load prescriptions and load assignments in that third webinar, is you're able to prescribe a weight range. So this allows you to give an athlete or a client a range of weights as a suggestion for them to use. So you give them a little bit of boundaries. That's a super useful feature, which sometimes there's some criticisms or negative things that are said about RIR or RPE training, and is that it's too subjective. It's hard to prescribe loads when you use that. So you can actually put a range in there with an RIR attached to it, so that you can have some little more clear boundaries for an athlete or a client. So they still have some ability to auto-regulate or self-select some loads in between that based upon how they are their readiness for the day. So that's a great thing to use. That's what it looks like when I prescribe it. And this is just absolute weight, which I'll bounce out and show you how to prescribe that here in a moment. This is what it looks like on the mobile view for the app when I go into the exercise over here. using this for like a back squat, it shows as that range. And again, I cannot hit the tick mark here until I have entered a range. If I didn't prescribe anything down here, I can actually tick this off without having anything in here because there wasn't something prescribed within the load or the RIR here. So do know that going forward if you want to have a range for everything, but it won't let them tick it off until you do that. So that's an absolute weight range. That's a very useful thing to utilize. Go to the next slide. The other nice thing that I really love, so a criticism that is levied against percentage-based training, percentage of 1RM training, is that my relative strength on any given day isn't necessarily, my 1RM can fluctuate, right? Each given day. So when I prescribe a rep target based off a single percentage of 1RM, that may not be, maybe a really hard set or maybe an easier set on any given day. So you can actually prescribe loading based off a range, which gives you some wiggle room. So that kind of solves that whole issue with prescribing just a straight percentage of 1RM, since your strength can fluctuate on any given day. And that's what it looks like on the athlete or client side, is it will prescribe load when I put it in here, as long as I have a 1 rep max in the system. It will prescribe a range when I set it there. And then again, the client or athlete has to put the weight in there before they can tick it off. So that's a very useful thing as well, which helps, again, increase the ability to auto-regulate training with a little bit more clear guidelines or boundaries, constraints on that, which is very, very useful, especially for people that don't really understand RIR-based training or RPE-based training based on RIR. So I've mentioned RPE and RIR training here a few times. I want to talk about a couple things here. It's very interesting. A new upgraded feature to the Bridge 2 is the ability to use RIR, or repetitions in reserve. So RPE training was really, as how it relates to resistance training, was really popularized by Michael Toucher, powerlifter and reactive training systems. Dr. Mike Zordos and Dr. Eric Helms have done a lot of research on RPE training based upon repetitions in reserve to validate a lot of it and show how to utilize it. The thing about RPE is it can be utilized for a lot of different things. So the context is very important. A lot of times in resistance training, we're assuming you understand that is based upon, RPE is based upon RIR. So it's anchored to repetitions in reserve. So what you see is there's an inverse relationship between RPE and RIR, meaning that when RPE is high, so if we go to the top of our chart here, it is a 10, then RIR is low. When RIR is high, RPE is low. So that makes sense to me. We make a chart for that. The problem with it and communicating it to clients is they have to go through that step of converting it over. So if I assign RPE to a client and say, I want you to do an RPE 8, they have to convert that in their mind to know that that means 2 repetitions in reserve. A lot of times it's just a whole lot easier just to communicate to clients or athletes raw RIR numbers. So there's pros and cons to using descriptors of RPE and RIR and all that different stuff. But the other nice thing, one of the things is like you can use these half numbers of RPE. That was one of the benefits of it. A lot of times with RIR, you couldn't really write a range. Now you can communicate it in a range, and you can actually do a RIR range on the Bridge as well. So that kind of solves that problem there. So with RPE, it can also be anchored to other things. Like I can do a dynamic effort set where there's a ton of repetitions in reserve on a particular, like a dynamic effort squat or a dynamic effort bench or something like that. So the effort can be super high. I'm moving the bar as fast as possible. So the RPE would be a 10, but there's obviously a lot more repetitions in reserve. So it's always, that context is really important. If less that understanding is there, it can get kind of misconstrued. So I tell you that just because of the fact that a lot of the stuff in research, if you read a lot of the monthly applications in strength sports, the monthly news article from Dr. Helms and Dr. Zotos, a lot of their communication in those articles and in the research has really gone the way of communicating more just purely in terms of RIR than even talking about RPE as much in relation to, some of these resistance training numbers. So I usually have been writing it out still, RPE stops, and then communicating both. I've really gone to the point now and just communicating it, like I said, in terms of pure RIR and using RPE more for just to communicate, pure effort, not based upon repetitions in reserve. And I just use it that way. So again, you just select the parameter in the bridge and then select RIR. There's a really helpful chart that pops up and that little information dot that helps communicate that to you and the client to explain what that is. Let me bounce out and I'll show you that too, just so you have a visual example of it rather than taking that for granted. So we'll just use our same chart here. I'm going to take off the height parameter here and just punch in RIR on here. Then I can write the RIR in here for a client. I can leave it blank if I want them to communicate how many repetitions they had. I'd usually write a note to say, hey, please record last set repetitions in reserve for me. If I want to put it in there, I can put whatever, 2 RIR, last set, I want 1 RIR for that. I can put it in that way. Again, I can do a range. If I want to write that in there, I want 1 to 2. I can apply that to, 2. On there, I think that just defaulted to 9. There's a little buggy sometimes on that. And then it'll record that way as well. There it goes. I had to click it in and out, then it popped in. So I can use that. That's a very useful way to do that. I mentioned the rep ranges. Here's how you do those for the absolute load. I can select that unit, and then I can just go over here to weight range. If I do this based off percentage of 1 RM, again, I scroll over it, then I go over to weight range, and then it allows me to put a percentage of 1 RM in the range for that. Okay. Well, let's bounce over to the PowerPoint again. The other thing that is extremely useful to use, and again, we're going to go into great detail in this when we talk about load prescriptions and load assignments, is the awesome feature within BridgeAthletic is the percent difficulty, which basically means that this is when I prescribe a rep target, such as 5s, 8s, whatever it may be, the percent difficulty is just simply the percentage of repetition max of the prescribed target. So it's going to be a percentage of a 5 RM if I prescribe 5, or it's going to be a percentage of a 8 rep max if I prescribe an 8. So the descriptors have been updated. This kind of explains how many repetitions in reserve, which is the best way. I love RIR, reps in reserve, rather than saying left in the tank or things like that, because it's a little more clear way to communicate that. So that's been updated. And we're always working on ways to improve communication to make it clearer so everybody's on the same page. This explains what that is. I have my own chart that I created too, just based on like 2.5% difficulty jumps, not to be confused with 1 RM or anything like that. Remember, this is the percentage of difficulty based on the rep target repetition max. So that's just a little chart that I put in there you can utilize too, which I found to be pretty accurate. This works great if I want to pre-prescribe a cycle out so that as the system collects data, it will put weights in there as long as I put a percent difficulty into it. It will, so I can plan out 5 weeks of training and put a percent difficulty into it that will plan out those numbers for an athlete or a client, so that I can pre-prescribe loads on those KPI or key performance indicator lifts, those indicator exercises, the ones that I really want to place a lot of stock in, the loads that I'm using, I can pre-prescribe those out. So people get asked that all the time. How do I make the system pick a weight ahead of time? That's how you can do it, is using that percent difficulty. This is a chart, just it can get kind of confusing, I know, when we talk about these different percentages. Sometimes my eyes will cross and go, percentages or what? Right? So this is a chart from Danelle Butcher and Adam Feit. They put out in a webinar that they did a while back, so I want to give them full credit for that. This is the idea of relative intensity, which is basically percent difficulty based on repetition max. So the top line here, and this isn't clearly laid out here, but these numbers up in the top row are repetitions. Okay, so let's just go to fives, because we all love fives. And if I drop down one, that says 87.5%. So what is that? That is percentage of 1 rep max. All these numbers in the middle section here are percentages of 1 rep max. And these numbers on the far left are the percent difficulty, which in this instance, so for example, if I do 90% difficulty of 5, that is 90% of my 5 rep max of this actual number right here. So that's what this top row is, kind of, you know, plus or minus a couple percent relatively. It's in the ballpark. So if I choose 90% of that and I move over to that row of my 1 rep max, and I hope this is clear, that's about 78.8% of my 1 rep max. So that's where all those numbers come into play. Most of the time when I'm prescribing percent difficulty, I'm going to stay above, for work sets, it's going to stay above 85% difficulty, because if I go over to that 85% number, that's like 75% of my 1 rep max, which is about a 10 RM load. So that's about 5 repetitions in reserve. So I just want to share that with you so you know where all those numbers come from, and hopefully that's not too confusing, and that's a useful chart to know what actual loads you are using. Again, some nitty-gritty geek stuff, which we won't go too deep into. Another feature that you know I love, if you've seen any of my stuff before, is the ability to use custom numbers, which I'll explain here in a second. So one of the things that we use at Results Fitness is, and everybody kind of makes fun of me about this, but I would put, when we were using our suspension trainer straps or TRX straps, if we were doing inverted rows or push-ups, I always felt it was very important for people to track where they put their toes or their heels, depending on the exercise. And we made these little numbers on the ground. We had our clients record the custom number on the ground, whether it be in feet or whatever parameter we were using on our old Excel spreadsheet. We would just like write number 6 if our toes were on line number 6. On the bridge, we would use feet for the distance and just write in 6 in feet. And then we just, make a note that said that's the custom number. So I like to geek out on that stuff so we can track progression, and I don't have to guess where my feet go the next time I come back to do this exercise. So I can be training at the same intensity level or an increased intensity level the next time. So we would switch over here. We put our notes in here. We use template sets to save that. So we didn't have to write it every time. We could just simply go up to our templates and write in our custom number, which how we save these things. So we can drop that in and have that descriptor and everything written in. So it saved us a lot of time and having to write that stuff out. So I could just click that over and then adjust the reps if I need to, add an extra set and so forth. There is a new feature. We asked for it and we got it on the bridge, which was the ability in the platinum packages. It is an upgrade, but there's an ability to use what's called the score number, which can actually be customized if you have the platinum feature. We called it custom number just to make it work for us and communicate in our language. So we just said record custom number on floor where heels are positioned to track progression. And then our athlete or clients would just simply write in that number just like we did on our old Excel spreadsheet. So that worked pretty seamlessly. We would use that for lots of different things. The only Downside is I had to go in and update my saved template sets in the new one, but that was really 2 clicks of a button. Okay, so I show you that because before things could get really wordy and all that stuff could get a little bit cumbersome with all this. So now with the ability to prescribe rep ranges, I don't have to write this anymore. I don't have to communicate what repetitions in reserve is relative to RPE anymore. I can just use raw RIR data. I do still write in the double progression, like the progression plan for the client, because I think that's useful. Sometimes that's assumed. So it's useful to have it there so people know what they're supposed to be doing without having to assume they know. There is a feature I didn't cover, which is tempo, which we can talk about a little bit at a different time. I just wanted to give you the ones that I love the best and give you the highlights, which we can dig into as you wish on there. I want to finish with one last super cool feature that I love. Like I said, when you ask for these features, the BridgeAthletic people listen to you, and they're always trying to enhance the user experience and give you what you want because they want this to be for the athlete and client to make things better. There is a feature, if you go into a client page over to the right, the messages, where you now have the ability to attach a file to a program like a PDF file or a screenshot. You can attach that directly in communications, which is sometimes very, very useful. You also have the ability, which I use often, is a microphone right here, which is the ability to record a voice note, which is a very powerful thing. When clients can actually hear your voice, you can kind of have a little more powerful experience for the client when they hear your voice versus having to type things out. It can be a time saver too, so I can be really, really clear when I explain stuff out. I can give some caveats and things for different exercises, or just be a whole lot more straightforward with that communication with that. And it does it directly too. You do not have to attach a voice note as you did previously. You can do it directly into the communication system on that. So if you have missed that, please make sure you look into that. It's awesome. And of course, if you do write stuff out, you can, there's a YouTube link as well. And if you do write stuff out, you can use emojis, which sometimes are helpful in communicating if you use the written word too. So helps to convey those types of things. Okay, so that's what I got for you. I want to save the last 15 minutes to answer any questions about what I just shared, to be able to elaborate on anything if there's any questions that you may have. I know a lot of people sign up for the webinars to kind of see the recordings, but it is very helpful when there is some live audience on here that can ask some questions that I can help, because there are probably a lot of questions that come up that people have that they aren't able to ask because they aren't on live. So those of you that are on live, please do ask.
We don't have any yet. People might be typing them in, but thanks for taking us through that, Craig, especially highlighting the messages and notes. That's a newer feature, so people might not be totally aware of that one, but a lot of capabilities there.
Yeah, I really like that one. That, especially that feature, be able to do the direct voice notes with it, is awesome, because it removes a lot. Like Cal Newport talks about this a lot, the author of Digital Minimalism and Deep Work. Like, removing friction just makes things a whole lot easier and more prone to be able to use them. The less things you have to click, the better when it can be really accessed like that. It's super, super helpful. Are clients able to send a voice note as well on their end?
Yeah, so they can do it. So that can really help, like with questions or anything, also like when they're in the gym themselves instead of having to sit and type things out.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think we always talk about how synchronous communication is the best, like what we're doing right now, having a back and forth versus asynchronous. Mm-hmm. But in degrees of, sometimes synchronous communication isn't possible. So when you're able to do those voice notes, that makes it one step closer to synchronous.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, voice notes and being able to record different sessions and stuff as well, I think can really help bridge a gap for remote training as well.
you know what I'm going to do too, because I sometimes take for granted that people know how to do this and why we have some time. Sometimes the question comes up is like, how do I attach this screenshot to people? So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. If I'm going to send somebody something, okay?
Yeah, good idea.
So, let me see here. Sharing as I navigate how to do this. Okay. So I'm back on that screen. Okay. I'm going to show you how to attach this media. Let's say I want to send, this isn't necessarily what I would send a client, but I'm going to take a picture here. So I'm on a MacBook Pro. The way that you attach a screenshot here, I take a screenshot, number one, I hit Command Shift 4. Okay, then I get this little doohickey. Then I just highlight over what I want to take a screenshot of right here, then let go. You heard that little, I don't know if you heard the camera click, but a camera clicked. And then what I do, you won't be able to see this part, but I'm going to go on to my, actually, hold on, let me go back to my, uh-oh.
Yeah, it looks like it might have frozen. Or at
Back
least
on
that's,
now?
I'm still seeing the, okay, yeah, it went away. Maybe it will load.
See, like, now am I back on? All good? Okay, now we're back on, right?
Yes, we are back on. Oh.
Yeah, I got logged out. Awesome. Somebody's on the gym again. Let me
Well,
pull
you
this
log
up.
back in. I had a question about just some Bridge features, so
Sure.
I'll answer that real quick. So this question was if there's any thought about adding wearable data to Bridge in the future. This is something that we have thought about. I have no timeline for you on when this could be possible, but definitely on our radar. We do get this feature request quite often. But we always love to kind of hear what people are thinking of or wanting. So as it becomes more prevalent or need in your space, please reach out and let us know, because the more we hear from people, the easier it is for us to kind of figure out where to go next. Yeah, nothing I can give you a date on right now in terms of wearables.
Okay, let's show you this. It was a lot easier than that just ended up being. So I'm on that message page. I took that screenshot, Command Shift 4 on my MacBook Pro. Then I'm just going to go over here to attach media. Okay, then it takes me over to my desktop. I click on the screenshot that I just took. I open it up.
Oh, it looks like we can't see that part, but that's kind of the behind the scenes of what just happened.
Weird.
I think it's because it maybe is just this tab, not the whole window, but we can see the screenshot now loaded.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So anyway, you set the media, and then it brings up your desktop, and then you add the screenshot, and then the screenshot is loaded, and then I can send it, and it sends that screenshot over to the client.
Yeah, nice and efficient. And these can be sent to an individual athlete or a team. You can also send messages directly just within your coaching staff, or there's also a notes section. So if I'm working with Craig, I can tag his name and write in my notes specifically about our session, and then it will just be there for me as coaching notes. So those ones are a little bit more helpful sometimes if there's something you don't want to leave on like an exercise that your client will see. Okay, we have another, well, this is more of a comment, but I think it could lead to showing something in the builder. So they thanked you for showing the 1 RME percentage range. It will make their life a lot easier. Within there, it's also sometimes helpful to show how they can check if there's a 1 RME and the estimated weight also. So that could be a cool thing to highlight. Because in order to use the 1 RME weight parameter, you do need to have that weight logged for the athlete, which sometimes is overlooked, and it will be a 0 then when they're on their app.
down. Can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to, if I'm going to use percentage of 1 RME, which is nice. Again, you can, now that makes this a little more applicable when you can use those ranges, which is really, really cool for these indicator type exercises that are built to be used for 1 RME. I'm going to have to go over here to check RME, see if I have one. So there is not anything entered here for the athlete. So I can go to view athletes. And if I have some data, like if I can project a 1 RME, the Bridge actually does this for you. If you look in the history of stuff, it will show you that. It can project a 1 RME. I can go here for this athlete, which is Bridge Tester. I can put one in here, such as, let's just call it 500 pounds. And I save edits. Now it's done. And then if I want to go in here and use that range, again, weight range of, let's say for 8 reps, I probably want to use something between 70 to maybe, some people will use 75% or higher. Now that's in there. Oops, I put a dash mark in there. There we go. And now from the screen too, if I don't know what this weight is, I can go here and estimate the weight too, to be able to look at it from the builder side. So that's what the athlete is going to see. And then I have my 1 RME. I can update this from here too when I go look at that. That allows me to edit it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, another question. If we have multiple athletes on different programs, am I able to see a team view of what they did for the week/day?
Multiple athletes on one single program?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Multiple. Oh, if I have multiple athletes on different programs, so maybe different. You want to clarify your question so we don't answer it incorrectly, but it sounds like maybe multiple athletes on different programs, like multiple programs.
Yeah. The team setting probably want to see what they're using for different exercises.
Yeah.
I don't really use that feature a whole lot personally. You may know more about that, Lauren. I know I have seen some stuff. I'm pretty sure you can. I'm almost 100% sure you can. Look at, if they're on a team, if they're on the same team, you can look at team data for an exercise, correct?
Yes, so you can pull up in our analytics reports. Okay, we have some clarity so we can answer this to the best way. So if athlete A is on program A, athlete B is on program B, is it possible to see weekly volume and intensity, etc.? So there's not a place to kind of see all of that in one view. In some of our reports, you can pull up other metrics. So you can compare like exercises, and it won't necessarily be tied to that program. So you could compare, or you can compare athletes. So you can compare athlete A and athlete B, regardless of the program they're on. Is there anything else you would kind of think of for this, Craig?
I don't, like I said, I don't really use that a whole lot because I'm not in the team setting. I'm more in the private sector with that. So I don't use that a ton. As you can see, my analytics window is pretty blank there for that stuff because we just look at, you know, on an individual basis for the most part with our clients and athletes versus, you know, team comparison. So I wish I had a better answer to that, but I don't, unfortunately. I can dig into it and take a peek though. One of your Rob probably knows pretty well on that too. We can ask him on that.
Yeah, our reports are probably the best place, depending on your package, so which reports you'll have access to. Our exercise comparison's a helpful one if you're kind of just trying to look for a specific athlete, or our prescribed versus actual report is really helpful because you can look at what you did prescribe in terms of volume and what they actually did for their program. So kind of playing around in there can be helpful. Okay. So Can you view the volume load of each athlete within a team interceptive of their program? Depending on your package, you can look at it for the program. We do have this analyze feature on the program level, but you can't see it necessarily for that athlete outside of their program. They can see it at the end of their workout, though, in the app. We give them a summary of kind of the volume completed for that individual workout, but that's not yet readily available to coaches. Let's see if we might have time for one more in here. Okay, one is more of a fun question for you, Craig. It sounds like not bridge related, so this will be a good one to end on. What do you think of the new Roadhouse movie?
That's got to be, I think I know who that is asking that. I haven't seen it yet. I am, you know, my first reaction to it was, this is going to be terrible. They don't want to screw up the classic Patrick Swayze movie. If you saw my one presentation, I had a little mullet back in the day, and I always often joke that I got confused for Patrick Swayze to be a stunt double, but they thought I'd be smaller because that was one of those lines in the movie. Thought you'd be bigger, but I was too big. Anyway, it's funny to those of you that are Roadhouse fans. Anyway, I've heard good things about it. My wife and I are going to watch it tomorrow evening, so I'll have more to say about it after tomorrow evening.
Okay, so maybe in our next webinar, we'll get an update. So
yeah, I'll give you a reaction.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Craig, for taking the time. Thank all of you for joining us. We did record this session, so we'll be sending it out. And we will also be linking to more information for the following webinars to come. The next one is end of April. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but end of April. But all the details will be included in the email, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, that one is going to be frequently asked questions too for kind of people that are new to the bridge. So if you have more questions about how to do certain things that whatever have been hard to do, when there's a better way to do something, please ask that and submit those to us, and we can go through those during the webinar. And I think that'll be a very useful thing because there's stuff that people don't know you can do, and we forget to say, hey, here's how you should do this. So it's a helpful reminder to get everybody as efficient as possible with their programming.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you all, and we will be in touch soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Craig.